Get off the road!
All right. Hi, I'm Mike of mikesroadtrip.com, a travel video blogger and quadcopter drone enthusiast. On this episode, I'm going to share with you how to get the best possible footage from your DJI Phantom 4 by using a series of Polar Pro filters. Now, I've conducted a series of tests in different lighting conditions, and I think you're going to be quite surprised at what I discovered. So come along with me and let me show you how to get the best possible footage from your DJI Phantom 4. Let's start off by talking about the camera settings, which will bring me to why filters are so important. Ideally, you want to be filming in manual mode with a shutter speed double that of your frame rate. So for example, this footage was shot in 4K at 30 frames a second at a shutter speed of 1/60th, or 60 as shown in your settings. If you were filming in 1080p at 120 frames a second, you'd want your shutter speed to be 240. At, say, 24 frames a second, the closest you can get is 1/50th, or 50. Now, the aperture on the Phantom 4 is fixed, so your only other variable is the ISO, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if we're filming with these settings in mind, and you were not using a filter to knock out some of the light, your shots would be completely blown out. In this case, I was using a Polar Pro ND64 filter, which has 6 stops of light reduction. My ISO on this footage was set at 200. The lower the ISO, the better. So using an ND64 filter is only good in extremely bright days in the afternoon hours. I found that if you have to bump up the ISO to 400, which is the next option, the noise level is really bad. To resolve this issue, I have 6 different Polar Pro filters in 2 protective cases. I do, however, think they could have designed the case to fit all 6 if they had placed them vertically, which would also make it easier to remove and also see the lettering indicating which is which. The following comparison shots will show you which filters work best in different lighting conditions. All of this footage is shot in 4K at 30 frames a second at a shutter speed of 1/60th. This first one uses the Polar Pro ND4 with polarizer, and as you can see, the footage is blown out, especially to the right. When using a polarizing filter, you're best to film at 90 degrees from the sun. As you can see in this shot, using the same filter, the sky is a little more even though the shot is still overexposed. This shot uses the ND8 with polarizer, and while still a bit overexposed, you can see it is better than the ND4 polarizer. This is the ND16 with polarizer, and as you can see, the quality is much better. Although the sky is a little bit blown out on the right, again, when using a polarizing filter, it's best to film at 90 degrees from the sun. Also, they work best with partly cloudy days. These polarizing filters by Polar Pro are circular, so you can adjust them to find the contrast that best suits your needs. This is the Polar Pro ND16, no polarizer. For these lighting conditions, this was without question the perfect filter choice. This is the ND32, a bit underexposed, but that could certainly be corrected in post-production. Since it was a bit underexposed, I bumped up the ISO to 200, and this is what it looks like. Similar to the ND16, but there's a bit of noise in the sky. This is the ND64 at 200 ISO, similar to the ND32 at 100 ISO, but again, you're starting to see some noise. Here is the ND64 at 400 ISO. Again, a bit of noise, but not too bad. But it is noticeable. Now, this noise issue is not a problem with the Polar Pro filters, but rather the capabilities of the DJI camera. So I would just really suggest utilizing the correct filter depending on your lighting conditions. We're back to the ND4PL with some cloudier conditions. This is the ND8PL, and even though it's cloudy, it's still a bit too bright for this filter. Here is the ND16PL, or polarizer, and I'm sorry for the movement, but I'm rotating the filter to show how dramatic the contrast can get. This is the ND16 without the polarizer. This is the ND32 at 100 ISO and the ND32 at 200 ISO. Finally, here is the ND64 at 100 ISO, 200 ISO, and 400 ISO. Of course, we're not typically filming while the Phantom is stationary, so I wanted to try and fly the same short path to show movement while running through the same series of Polar Pro filters. By the way, Polar Pro sells a lot of Phantom accessories, including this lens cap stabilizer, which I find to be much better than the one supplied by DJI. Well, that's a look at a line of Polar Pro filters to help you get the best possible footage from your DJI Phantom. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below and I'd be happy to answer them. Until next time, we'll see you on the road.
MikeRoadTrip.com